Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ and welcome to your detailed forecast update for December 19th, 2024. We've got a lot to get through today, including that tropical low that's going to be sliding down the Cape York Peninsula, saturating the far northern coastline of Queensland with up to 500mm of rainfall expected over the coming couple of days. This video will feel a little bit higgledy-piggledy. We're going to be jumping around everywhere across Queensland. If you haven't already, then please consider subscribing. But without any further ado, let's get stuck straight into things here. You can see the tropical low now beginning to spin itself up quite nicely. It's developed really nicely overnight over the Cape York Peninsula, and it's now extending further inland with some heavy falls south of Weipa down through Arakan, and then extending right down to about Karumba and Burketown. You can see, even though that we're out of radar coverage, there is still some moderate rainfall in this general area here, down through some of the indigenous communities on the western coast of the Cape York Peninsula. The moderate rainfall is also extending down the east coast of the Cape York Peninsula. Lockhart River's picked up about 40mm overnight, and some of the locations further down the coast, especially down towards Cooktown and around Hopevale and Cape Flattery, the rainfall accumulations have been in excess of about sort of 60 to 70mm over the past 12 hours. There really is quite a lot of rainfall in this system as well, and we can't be forgetting about the rainfall that we will get to later on in the forecast update, extending through the central Queensland coastline. Over 120mm has fallen overnight at Hamilton Island, with a lot more rainfall on the cards for that area now in the forecast. It has been revised and changed once again. Let's just jump straight into the forecast. I know a lot of people are itching to know how much rainfall is going to be coming through for their location. Well, the story is this tropical low is going to continue to develop today. It's going to really drag in a lot of moisture from the northern parts of the Coral Sea, and as such, that moisture band that's going to extend into the Cape York Peninsula here, it's just going to have all day to pick up as much rainfall as it possibly can. And we know how these Coral Sea tropical lows can work. We know how they develop, and they bring a lot of rainfall to whatever places they impact, especially at this time of the year. We're in our wettest couple of months for the top end of Queensland, and this tropical low is going to make the most of it, let me tell you that. The moderate rainfall extending across the northern parts of the Cape York Peninsula will be mixed in with some stronger thunderstorms here and there, extending through Moomba up to Lockhart River throughout the course of tonight. The really heavy rainfall though is going to develop adjacent to the coastline, especially just outside of Cooktown for the looks of things, throughout the course of this afternoon and evening. Now, the heavy rainfall will then tonight get itself jammed up into the corner south of the Cassowary coast around Ingham and Cardwell. I forget exactly what this place or this part of Queensland is called, but the really heavy rainfall is going to get itself jammed up there just south of the Cassowary coast, and that's where we're expecting our heaviest falls in the mountains, just adjacent to the coastline outside of Cardwell and Tully. The really heavy falls are going to be lingering there. And there's still really no low pressure system that's kind of traceable, at least on this forecast here throughout the course of tonight. It's going to be a really hard sort of system to pinpoint, but it will be somewhere over the Cape York Peninsula. And keep in mind, the positioning of this system also plays a really important role in how much rainfall that some of these locations are going to pick up. And the fact that we don't know exactly where this storm is going to be, no forecast model could have any chance of accurately predicting it at this time, just considering the nature of the Cape York Peninsula and the fact that the system hasn't even developed yet. It's just still attached to a very broad low pressure system. It kind of is bugging the forecasters at this time. It's really difficult to give an accurate number in terms of how much rainfall is expected. Don't be alarmed though, we can give a very good number, especially for locations between Cairns and Townsville. I can expect to say at least flooding rainfall is expected for these locations. Some huge rainfall accumulations look possible. We're talking at least 100mm tonight, and then to the 9 AM tomorrow morning a further 100 to 150mm, and that rainfall just picking up throughout the course of Friday as well. I mean, you can see it here as this tropical low finally re-emerges off the coast here. For locations between Cairns down to Townsville and Bowen, the huge rainfall accumulations are just going to be funneled ashore, and throughout the course of Friday, I mean, if we don't see 6 hourly rainfall accumulations in excess of 125mm for at least a couple of places between Cairns and Bowen, this isn't a tropical low, this is a weak rain depression, but it is most likely that it is going to dump some really significant rainfall. I'm expecting those big accumulations to amount, so let's dive into those right now. You can see the rainfall does begin to ease off throughout the course of Friday, so we're only going to take a look at the rainfall accumulations for the remainder of the working week. In terms of peak numbers though, there are going to be some pretty big surprises. The forecast has been flipped on its head from yesterday as well, just considering the fact that this storm is expected to now once again track closer to the Queensland coastline, which is going to bring less rainfall to the far northern parts of Queensland, and it's going to concentrate that rainfall or the excess rainfall around the Townsville sort of area. Peak rainfall accumulations outside of Townsville extending out inland towards Ravenswood are a very conservative 175mm on this forecast. Like I said, I'd be shocked if places weren't getting 300mm over the next 36 hours up in this part of far northern Queensland, especially as you get around towards Ingham and Cardwell. These places can get surprisingly wet, especially from weather events like this. So I think the 100mm that the Eastern Wave has on the forecast here is very, very conservative at this time. The Axis G3 is doing a bit of a better job in terms of the rainfall numbers, but still I just think that the rainfall forecast for far north Queensland in general is very conservative conservative by a factor of about 50% as well. I reckon they're going to see about twice as much rainfall as what the forecast is suggesting here, just based off how recent rainfall events have developed over in the far north of Queensland. They've consistently picked up more rainfall, and I know precedence is a very bad factor to use in a forecast, but just up in the far north of Queensland, historically the wettest places in Australia, 80 to 90 millimetres of rainfall from a weather event like this. I mean, that could fall in an hour or so around Innisfail and Tully. And if we already take a look at the amount of rainfall that's falling around this system at this time, we've got to switch it over to the radar because the windy satellite isn't working. If we take a look at the rain rates in this system right now, just as it gets across towards Cooktown, I mean, they're a little bit underestimated just considering the proximity of this storm to the radar, but we're talking about very slow-moving bands housing rainfall between 20 and 40 millimetres an hour. So if you do the math on that, 80 millimetres on the forecast when they're expecting 6 to 12 hours of pretty steady moderate rain around Innisfail and Tully, that's a very conservative forecast indeed, the 80 millimetres. The low-pressure system will get itself offshore from the Cassowary Coast sometime tomorrow afternoon, and as such, the rainfall for the far northern areas of Queensland will ease off from there. There'll still be some heavy falls here and there, especially associated with thunderstorms on the western side of this system, and they'll wrap around into about Townsville later on to the afternoon and evening, and then the heavy falls will be contracted towards the east and southeast of this system, and they'll slide along the central Queensland coastline for locations between Eyre through Bowen, Hamilton Island, Proserpine, and then down to Mackay throughout Friday night and into Saturday morning. There will be some isolated pockets of heavy falls Friday night and Saturday morning around Hamilton Island, and there'll also be some follow-up rainfall throughout the course of Saturday just from the back end of this system. There'll be plenty of rainfall funneled up into the far northern areas of Queensland as well there. Another 50 to 100 millimetres is possible by the looks of things on Saturday, depending on how these thunderstorms materialise, and it also looks like some good thunderstorms will make it far inland as well, out towards Georgetown and Croydon, really making the most of the convective energy being funneled ashore here by this tropical low as it develops rapidly by the looks of things on Saturday afternoon. If you're looking out for a cyclone anywhere in the Coral Sea, it doesn't look like this system's going to impress you at all. It does make a shot of tropical cyclone status at some point on Saturday, but it's really only got until about midday on Saturday to actually attain tropical cyclone status, and that is in no world long enough for this system here. And as such, it dissipates by the looks of things on Sunday afternoon or into early Monday morning without attaining tropical cyclone status, and really just being quite an impressive rain depression for the most part. I cannot stress enough how much rainfall is possible from these systems, even though the forecast, and same with all other forecasting agencies, they're just not calling for it at all. I do not see a world where Innisfail picks up 100 millimetres, which is what is on the official forecast, and also what a bunch of other people are saying as well, especially along some of those Facebook groups. I just do not see a world where Innisfail gets a 3-day rainfall accumulation from this tropical low of 100 millimetres. It just isn't possible, considering Innisfail can pick that up in an hour, for hours straight. It just really doesn't make sense to me at this time, and especially considering how this system is developing. It's developing with much more rainfall than we did expect. I mean, there wasn't any forecast that was suggesting 100 millimetres plus across the Cape York Peninsula, and that's what we've had overnight. So the rainfall here in this system is substantially higher than what the forecast was initially suggesting already. And just take a look at this here. Whilst Cairns might miss out on a 3-figure total from this weather system, considering they've only got about a 6-hour window for significant rainfall accumulations, for locations between Innisfail down to Townsville, just with how the rainfall will develop later tonight and into early tomorrow morning, like I said, I just do not see a world where this heavy rainfall doesn't amount to 3-figure rainfall accumulations for a very widespread part of the central to far northern Queensland coastline, and even inland out towards Ravenswood and Charters Towers. It just doesn't seem possible to me that we see relatively light rainfall accumulations from this tropical low. I mean, you could comb through the history books and there's not a tropical low on there that's delivered less than 100 millimetres to the far north of Queensland. So the rainfall forecast is a little bit fishy to me, and even though there has been a lot of uncertainty, and especially considering my forecast might seem very, very bullish at this time, it can be hard to know exactly what to believe, but it's just my feeling, my gut feeling, that accumulations are going to be sitting between 100 and 200 millimetres, with isolated totals between 200 and 250 millimetres further inland in the mountains adjacent to Townsville and the mountains adjacent to Cardwell and Ingham. I think the Cassowary Coast is a little bit more of a harder sell. I should have made that a little bit clearer a couple of minutes ago in terms of the peak rainfall accumulations there. It looks like, just considering their nature there and how this rainfall is going to be sliding from north to south, it doesn't look like they're going to pick up the absolute worst of the rainfall accumulations, and especially considering the breeze will turn offshore by early tomorrow morning. But I still reckon that they're in for at least a high double-figure to early triple-figure total, especially with how this rainfall is slowly developing. And in terms of what's driving this, I mean, sea surface temperatures 30 degrees, even 31 in pockets just offshore from the far northern Queensland coastline, so there is a huge amount of fuel for this system to make the most of. And the East Australian current as well, funneling these 29 to 30 degrees Celsius sea surface temperatures, which are just jet fuel conditions for tropical lows to fire up intense amounts of convection extending as far south as about Hamilton Island. So this system's going to have a run of intensification until it gets to about here, when it slides out of the East Australian current and finds some more unfavourable conditions, both thermodynamically and also in the upper atmosphere. Just by comparison, the Gulf of Carpentaria averaging between 32 to 33 degrees Celsius sea surface temperature, so there really isn't any comparison between the amount of energy that the Gulf of Carpentaria has to anywhere in the world, but also the Coral Sea. There is just so much energy for tropical low and tropical cyclone activity there. And I know this has been a long forecast already in terms of what's expected in terms of rainfall, but we'll just touch on the wind speeds as well, because this is a tropical low. We're not expecting a full-blown tropical cyclone here, but there still will be some strong wind speeds and some strong wind gusts, especially early Friday morning and into early Friday afternoon. Wind speeds will be averaging 30 to 50 kilometers an hour, with gusts in excess of 50 kilometers an hour, potentially a little bit stronger than that as well, up to about 60 kilometers an hour, being funneled ashore around the Townsville towards Ayr area. And then these winds will slightly intensify but head further offshore throughout the course of Friday. It could get a little bit blustery along Hamilton Island and some of the Whitsundays as well throughout the course of Friday evening and Saturday morning. And those wave heights as well are going to increase substantially throughout the course of Saturday. So boating is also not an advisable thing to do at all pretty much this weekend, or at least from Friday into Saturday evening. The wave heights and the winds are going to be pretty high indeed, up to about 4 meters on the waves, and wind speeds of between 50 and 60 kilometers an hour expected. Nothing crazy, but again, it isn't pleasurable and it isn't calm boating, that's for sure. If you live in a flood-prone area, make sure you are heeding all of the warnings. There are flood watches in effect for the far north of Queensland and also into parts of central Queensland as well, so there are warnings out here. The Bureau of Meteorology is expecting a boatload of rainfall to come through, but I'd reckon that they're still very light on the forecast here. I know that my forecast is very bullish and it could completely flop on its head, and the rainfall rates could be much lower than I'm expecting or talking about in this video here, but just considering the nature of the setup that we have, especially for locations between Cardwell and Townsville, a notoriously difficult area to forecast for rainfall, I just reckon that they're going to get a lot more rainfall than what the forecast does suggest. But that's just my opinion as well, and if you think that's bull, then make sure you go and check out another forecast. You can find plenty of them on Facebook, YouTube, or you can go straight to the Bureau of Meteorology. They have some good information over there. But that is enough for the far north and the central Queensland coastline. So you can see 10-day rainfall accumulations, although they are impressive, but they're mostly kind of propped up by the 3 or 4-day rainfall accumulations here. There's nothing that kind of stands out to me in the next 10 days. A couple of thunderstorms could add to those totals. Into the southeast of Queensland, though, like I said a couple of weeks ago, we're going to be waiting until 2025 for our next bout of severe thunderstorms. Yes, we had some last night with the heavy rainfall there, and accumulations have been in excess of 120 millimetres around Springbrook, but the rainfall accumulations, for the most part, they haven't been enough widespread to call that a proper severe thunderstorm outbreak. There was just a couple of severe cells that produced some great rainfall, and again, as you can see on the forecast here, nothing expected in the way of storms, rainfall. It's just sunshine, 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 and more sunshine until what looks to be about the 23rd, when a couple of thunderstorms might blow up, and the 24th as well, but it looks like it's going to be a bright and sunny Christmas as well. And again, we're going to be waiting deep into 2025 by the looks of things for another round of severe thunderstorms, which is great because around the Gympie area, they need a couple of weeks of dry weather. They are well and truly underwater by the looks of things as well. I mean, there's a lot of rivers up there that are at the major flooding alerts, and there's also quite a few that are also at the moderate to the minor flooding alerts as well. So if you do live around Gympie, you can relate to the fact that you're just being flooded out basically at this time. It is a good time of the year, though, especially considering we're expecting a couple of weeks of dry weather. The rivers up there are going to get a really good flush, and they will drop back down again in time for some good rainfall that's likely to come through in early January, just from a bit of a burst of tropical activity expected in the Coral Sea. So it looks like the rivers are going to get their nice kind of pre-wet season flush out. They've had some great rainfall for the last couple of weeks up there, but there's some great sunshine on the forecast up in the Gympie area, which is really good to see. And you can see by next Friday, the 27th of December, well after Christmas, the drought monitoring, you can see soil moisture values here back into kind of the normal range. They'll still be actually a little bit below average across parts of the southeast of Queensland. They won't be in full-blown drought conditions, but you can see they will be begging for rainfall at this point as we head into the new year. Nothing on the immediate forecast into 2025. There's going to be a pretty dry start to the new year. It's going to be a pretty calm start as well to the new year, but there could be a little bit of rainfall expected in the Coral Sea from tropical lows, which we'll get to later on in this forecast update. Again, nothing interesting happening around Victoria, New South Wales, South Australia or Tasmania in terms of rainfall. It's now time for us to talk about the heatwave that's going to be extending across interior parts of Australia in the lead up to the Christmas period. You can see as we flick on the temperature observations, it's starting to warm up quite nicely across parts of Western Australia, already into the mid-30s for some locations, into the mid-30s across Queensland as well, and it's early while I'm making this video as well. Warm temperatures expected today, tops of into the mid-40s expected outside of Onslow and Exmouth, tops into the 40s expected across much of Western Australia and parts of the Northern Territory Territory and South Australia as well. Typical weather for this time of the year, but it is going to continue to warm up. We're expecting about a week straight of 44-degree plus days across parts of WA, and then we're expecting a week straight of about 42-degree days across interior parts of the Northern Territory and also into the southwestern corner of Queensland. Now, a couple of days of 40 degrees is nothing to kind of shrug at across interior parts of Australia, but once you get about a week or 10 days of straight 42 plus, that does start to become pretty hot. You're just not giving the ground or any buildings for that matter time to cool down, and as such that's what would constitute a heat wave, and quite a strong and intense heat wave at that. You can see warm temperatures expected to extend into the Perth metro area in the 22nd. Sunday it's going to be 38 degrees. Monday it's going to be a warmer 38 as well, or 36, a cooler 36 rather, but it is going to get a little bit warmer as you get further inland up towards 43 or 44 into the wheat belt. That's going to get quite warm indeed, and then of course up to about 47 into parts of offshore from Western Australia. Tuesday, in the lead up to Christmas Eve, those temperatures are going to drop off a cliff for Perth as the cool change sweeps through. We might actually see a couple of showers in the lead up to the Christmas period here as a weak cold front blows through, and then throughout the course of Wednesday, Christmas Day for Perth, a top of 21 degrees, so that'd be about 10 degrees below the average. That's going to be pretty cold indeed, and actually quite a disappointing Christmas, but at least it looks like we're going to have some relatively fine conditions. A couple of showers might be around, a couple of clouds as well might be around, especially into the morning, but around the rest of the nation, South Australia is going to be sweltering through a heatwave. Ceduna, a top of 42 expected on Christmas Day. Adelaide, a warm top of 34. Melbourne, a very warm top of 33. Canberra, a top of 30. Sydney, a cooler top of 24. Brisbane, a very humid top of 26 by the looks of things. And then up into the north, Darwin, stock standard weather of 32. And down in the extreme south, Hobart actually going to be leading Perth in terms of the temperature with a top of 21, and some warmer temperatures also expected across the interior parts of Tasmania, up to about 26 or 27 there. So Christmas is going to be a warm one over east, especially into the southeast of the nation as well, around Melbourne and then in towards Tasmania, but it's going to be very cool in the west, especially into the immediate southwestern corner. Perth expecting a top of 21, Albany a top of 16. That's going to be very cold indeed, possibly one of the coldest Christmases that we have had in the last couple of years. In fact, it will definitely be the coldest that we've had in the last couple of years, just going off memory for Perth. Probably the coldest that we've had in quite a few years, that's for sure. Now, that's enough of the heat forecast. Let's just turn this video quickly tropical once again. I mean, we've been talking about a lot of tropical stuff. It's basically just been a tropical weather update, this forecast. But if we push this forecast into the later periods of December, you can see there is expected to be enhanced convection from the monsoon trough extending across the Solomon Sea, across towards Vanuatu and Fiji. And if you are a follower of the Axis G3 model, you can see that a weak tropical cyclone is expected to spin itself up on Christmas Day or Boxing Day offshore from Australia, well into the Coral Sea. In fact, much closer to New Caledonia and Vanuatu than it is towards Queensland. The Axis G3 has been saying this for quite a while, and it really does house some intense rainfall, this system here, so this kind of looks like a bit of a bogus forecast to me from the Axis G3. It's not how a tropical cyclone should look on the forecast models, and you can also see other forecast models not calling for basically anything at all. The Eastern WF and the GFS saying there's absolutely nothing expected. I do expect enhanced moisture from the monsoon trough to extend across parts of the Solomon Islands and into Vanuatu, Fiji and New Caledonia, but a fully blown tropical cyclone on the 25th or the 26th, well, I'd expect to have signals on other forecast models, considering that it is only a week away now on the forecast, and no other forecast model is kind of calling for it. A weak tropical low is possible here, but it doesn't look like a fully blown tropical cyclone. Definitely nothing too strong is expected at this time, and then rolling it into the New Year period, yes, there'll be a couple of spin-ups in the Coral Sea by the looks of things, but it doesn't look like anything crazy through there. In fact, it looks like we're going to have to wait well into 2025 for some real rainfall to pipe up once again across the far northern areas of Queensland. So we're going to have a bit of a quieter period across the tropics, especially into the northern parts of Queensland. Tropical lows not really expected, definitely nothing in the way of tropical cyclones. The GFS isn't really calling for anything either in the Axis G3. It has only that system outside of Vanuatu. But if we slide things over into Western Australia, there is some stuff expected to happen well offshore from WA. In fact, we do have a bit of a weak spin-up expected throughout the course of this week, just offshore from WA. You can see a bit of a tropical low is expected as we head into the Christmas period, or a little bit of a low pressure system rather is expected to head itself offshore into the Christmas period on the 25th and the 26th, and this low pressure system here has a slim chance of gathering a little bit of steam and maybe developing into a tropical cyclone around the Cocos-Keeling Islands, but the chances are next to zero at this time here. But the other forecast models do favour it a little bit more. You can see the Eastern WF keeping it as a very weak tropical low pretty much throughout the entire duration of its life, but the GFS is a little bit more confident, calling for it to possibly spin up into a tropical cyclone sometime on the 30th or the 31st. Again, that's a very difficult forecast to sell at this time, just considering how far away it is and how much uncertainty there is between other forecast models. In short, nothing crazy expected offshore from Western Australia. In terms of rainfall accumulations as well, it's looking pretty dry there as well. We could really do with another bit of a rainfall period across parts of the northern parts of Western Australia, and especially into the southwest of the state as well. A couple of showers will be very welcome there, just maybe not on Christmas. Save them for Boxing Day or something. But in terms of the weather for Western Australia, it's looking pretty stock standard, warm, hot, around, plenty of storms as well across the north, and same deal for the Northern Territory, nothing out of the ordinary there. It's just Queensland that's providing us with a lot to talk about in these forecast updates. Again, I know I've sounded really alarmist in this forecast update, and you feel free to let me know if that's worried you in the comment section down below, if you've got concerns or questions as well regarding the forecast for your immediate location. But I just feel that even with the other forecast models suggesting about 3 times as much rainfall as what the Bureau of Meteorology is suggesting, I mean, take a look at this, 250, 260 millimetres expected outside of Innisfail in terms of the rainfall accumulation compared to the Bureau of Meteorology's 60 or 70 millimetres, so 3 to 4 times the amount of rainfall expected on this forecast model here. I just reckon that there's going to be a whole lot more rainfall than what the official forecast does suggest, and of course that is just my hunch. My resume is obviously not as detailed as the Bureau of Meteorology's resume here, but I have nailed a couple of forecasts in the far north of Queensland in terms of rainfall over the past 12 months, and I feel like this is a very good forecast that I have just made. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best up in far northern Queensland. If you live in a flood-prone area, make sure you're using today to prepare. You're going to have a fine sunny morning by the looks of things, a couple of clouds streaming in here and there, but the showers will build from this afternoon. So if you can get your preparations done this morning, that would be fantastic for you and for your family as well. And if you do live in a really flood-prone area where 300 millimetres would cause some catastrophic damage, then make sure you are expecting to be cut off and you've got your flood supplies already. And of course, in a weather event like this, do not panic. It is not a strong tropical cyclone. It is just a rainfall depression, and they're built for it up in the far north of Queensland. There is no reason to panic from this system here. Just stay cool, calm and collected, crack open a nice cold beer this afternoon and evening, and maybe take work off tomorrow and drink a few beers as the rain rolls in. It's going to be a fantastic sight to see, and I imagine a lot of people are very excited for 300 millimetres of genuine tropical rainfall to come through over the next couple of days. Of course, 300 millimetres is a very bullish number at this time, but still at this time some very good rainfall is expected. Anywhere between 100 to 200 millimetres somewhere across the far north of Queensland will be fantastic to watch it stream through tomorrow morning and into tomorrow afternoon if you live further south. Anyway, so that is all that I have time for this morning. If you have enjoyed this forecast update, then please do let me know in the comment section down below. Any feedback or comments or concerns, then also please do let me know in the comment section down below. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now. Again, I could not run the show without them, and their support is also much appreciated. But that is all from me today, and I will catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.